Sony just announced a very interesting lens. This is the 16mm 1.8. In this video, I just want to talk about the lens itself, the specs, my possible uses for it, and of course, alternatives to this lens. Let's get started. I'm very excited about this lens. I don't think I've been ever this excited about a lens before, but this lens is special. Let's build a bit of context. Why am I so excited about this lens? Now, recently I've taken a bit of liking to vlogging on this thing. This is the DJI Action 5, and particularly what I like about it best is the extremely wide focal length. Now, this specific camera, since it's an action cam, it has a focal length of, I think, about 11 to 15 mm. I don't know the exact number, but it's very wide. Now, after a bit of time just recording myself, I realized that I'm very comfortable with this wide of a lens. So I wanted to see what are lenses that I can use for my Sony a7 IV that can replicate this kind of wide look and feel. Now, my go-to lens is a 20mm 1.8, and I think that the newly announced 16mm would just give me something a little bit wider, but something very similar to what I'm used to on the 20mm 1.8. Especially that I'm discovering that I really like this very wide field of view. I want to explore if the 16mm can actually be a good fit for my style of vlogging. Let's talk about the specs of this lens. Let me just read through this. It has 11 aperture blades, 15 elements and 12 groups, the clickable aperture ring. It has the same focusing motor as the 20mm 1.8 that I'm using now, so I guess the focusing performance should be fairly similar to what I'm used to on this specific lens. It has a super close minimum focusing distance of about 15 millimeters, so this far, something like this maybe, so excellent for vlogging as well. But most importantly, these are the most important specs for me at least. So the 16mm should only weigh around 300 grams, whereas the 20mm I'm using is 375 grams, so it's that much more lighter, so easier to use, especially if I'm traveling, and it's shorter by about 12 millimeters. So it's lighter, smaller, so it should be excellent for what I need it for, specifically vlogging and a bit of cinematography. Now let's compare. So I've been talking about the 20mm 1.8 that I'm using, and generally I think this is the go-to lens for solo filmmakers, people who like to capture themselves while they're out and about. But the 20mm focal length kind of means that you have to hold the camera out that much further or make use of a tripod. From my experiences with the 16mm to 35mm lens, it's actually doable to just hand hold the camera like this with the lens in your hand, and it should give you like a decent field of view, even like this. With the 20mm, you kind of have to hold it out a little bit further. Now, I think there's one thing that is actually very difficult to quantify: the comfort of actually vlogging with a wider lens. Because right now I'm on the 20mm, I have to hold it out a little bit far, and it gets tiring. And I get tired holding out my camera this far away from my body just to get proper framing. If I can hold it out just a slightly bit closer, that's actually a huge difference in how much I'd get tired. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'd prefer the 16 over the 20. And this is actually the reason why I'm so interested about the 16mm, since it's mostly the same lens. It looks like it's the same lens, except it's that much more wide and that much more light. Another lens that's probably in the same conversation here is the Sony 14mm 1.8. Now that is a G Master, so it's gonna cost a lot of money, but even for my purposes though, I don't think that's an excellent alternative to the new 16mm 1.8, just because it's a little bit bigger, heavier, and you can't put any filters in the front element of that lens. One other lens that I've been trying to get my hands on, but after the announcement of the 16mm, I probably wouldn't get it anymore, is the Laowa 10mm 2.8. Now for me, 10mm is a very interesting focal length. Going back to our point on action cameras, now action cameras are very close to that, 11mm, 10mm. It's very wide, and I think it's actually more comfortable for me to have that wide of a focal length for my camera, for my vlogs. It's just that from experience, I also like going out in the evenings, and that 2.8, even though it's good in low light, I think 1.8 is definitely better for low light performance. Plus, I actually like evening vlogging, so I think the bigger aperture will let in more light, which makes it easier to shoot in the evenings. Practical use case though. Number one, I already have the 20mm. Do I really need the 16mm? Spoiler alert, I probably will be buying the 16mm just because it's that much more wide, it's useful for me, and it's very interesting, it's lighter. It's probably gonna be the lens that will stay on my camera like 99% of the time. Because primarily, I like vlogging, I like pointing it at myself, and the wider field of view, very, very useful for vlogging. For cinematography though, I'm using the A7 IV, so I can always just crop in since it has a decent enough sensor. I have APS-C mode, which it's still 4K even though it's cropped in. Plus I have clear image zoom on Sony cameras, so you can zoom in a little bit more. I think it should reach about a 30mm equivalent. And besides, if I need more reach, I'll probably be using this lens. This is the 24 to 105 zoom lens of Sony as well. It's one of my favorite lenses, but of course, I don't use it much for vlogging because it's heavy. And again, I think the low light performance of that 1.8 is why I'm sold. Just because I can bring it out wherever I want. If I need to step down, I can step down. You cannot step up with a 4.0 lens. So just to summarize this video, I think me personally, I will be buying the 16mm 1.8 when it comes out, when it's available, just because I think it will be the perfect lens for my purposes. Of course, you have to decide for you if this lens will also fill your needs. So in conclusion, I think for my specific use cases as a vlogger, as a travel vlogger who likes to travel in Asian countries which typically have tighter spaces, I think the 16mm 1.8 will be an excellent addition to my lens lineup. So if you're also interested in this lens or you're kind of on the fence about buying it, I think you have to subscribe, because what I'll be doing is when I get the lens, I'll be doing a bunch of reviews, a bunch of tests, just to see how effective this lens actually is. So please look forward to those videos coming up. But for now, if you like this video, hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment. What are you excited about this year that's coming out of your favorite camera brand? For me, it's Sony. What about you? Remember to thumbs up, and I will see you in our next video.